you got to massively reset your expectations.
Yeah.
And like, if you get told no once, that doesn't mean anything. Like most stuff I've tried to do, I get told no dozens of times before. Like, you got to adapt and find a way around it.
Yes. This is the Main Street Reimagined podcast, a show for people ready to turn visions into realities and ideas into businesses. Hey, I'm Luke Henry, and each week I lead conversations with Main Street dreamers who took the leap to launch a business, renovate a building, or start a movement. Their ideas, their mindsets, and their inspirations, as well as some of the highs and lows along the way. This is a place for dreamers, creators, developers, and entrepreneurs to learn, share, and be inspired to change your community through small business. Enjoy the show. Hey friends, this is Luke Henry, and this is the Main Street Reimagined podcast. Thanks so much for being with us. This week, I'm excited to be bringing another great interview, and this is a cool one because we are on site. I am here with Jablonka. Hey, Jared.
How you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for hosting me here. We are at the Leisure Club, one of Downtown Delaware, Ohio's newest establishments. And so if you're not watching on YouTube, I invite you to go over, pop over, check this place out. You get a little bit of a feel for the vibe with where we're recording here. We've got a great fluorescent light behind us with the Leisure Club. Cool leather couch. This is just a really, really cool environment. So, Jared, tell us a little bit, if folks haven't been into the Leisure Club, which they likely haven't because you just had your grand opening last weekend. What is this place? What would people find if they come in?
So, Leisure Club Lounge. So we're in the basement space of 1 West Winter Street in downtown Delaware. We're below the First Commonwealth Bank branch at Sandusky and Winter. So this is, we're about 3,000 square feet of kind of lounge bar space. We just opened this past weekend, first weekend in June was our grand opening. So we're kind of digging out of the sort of, grand opening rush. So we have, Leisure Club is a brand that's been around the Columbus market for a while. Matt Barnes was the founder of the company, I want to say 2016, 17 maybe.
Okay.
And he's had several locations around Columbus, on the south side, in the Fort, and then they were in Grandview for a while. They've currently got another club in Old Town East.
Okay, yeah.
At the Trolley Market, East Market. And Matt and I and our other partners, Jason and Felicia Ronk, got introduced in January of this year, and we've been spending the last 6 months kind of building out the space, tweaking the business plan and the model and all that. So it's kind of a hybrid between a membership club and a bar. So we're open to the public. Leisure Club's other location, downtown Columbus, is strictly membership, but this one is open to the public. We do have membership options here that get you benefits like access to curated experiences. We do like stand-up comedy, live music, group trips, and it gets you access to the space like during sort of non-service hours. Like you can come, do some co-working stuff here if you'd like. Yeah. Special happy hour menu, discounts on merchandise, that type of thing. But you don't need to be a member to come. We're open. For now, we're doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 to 11 hours, and then, expand from there.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. So, what was sort of the vision exactly when you set to kind of set the space here? I mean, again, for folks that haven't been in, like how would you describe the theme here and the decor and some of that?
So we've got 3 main areas. The front room, when you walk in, if you walk down the stairs off of Winter Street, the room that you walk into looks like kind of a nice, sort of higher end bar. There's a nice round horseshoe shaped bar to your left. And then we build a bunch of custom booths around the perimeter on the right side. So it looks and feels like a nice, cocktail bar up front. And then behind that in the rear, there's another room that's definitely more loungy. We've got 4, 5, 6 different kind of like living room setups, sort of, so that if you've got, whether it's if you're by yourself or you've got a couple or a bigger group of like 6 or 8, you can kind of like pick your spot and hang out, and it sort of feels like you're. Some people describe it as like your dad's basement or your granddad's garage. That type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of nostalgia from like the late 70s, early 80s, some 90s stuff. But I think there's a lot of stuff in here that's interesting to people of all different ages and demographics. But if you're in the like mid 30s to mid 40s, you're probably going to see a bunch of like, maybe posters you had on your wall when you were a little
exactly.
kid.
That's good. That's what I was going to say too. As I'm looking around, this is the room that we're sitting in here. So I see a Michael Jordan poster, got a Dale Earnhardt, Bruce Lee. There's a old Marlboro advertisement.
Some quirky
here,
stuff.
So
My partner Matt Barnes he's the vision for sure. He's very artistic, very creative, and he kind of intentionally has a mix of some kind of like, casual, playful, I don't want to say lowbrow, but like approachable stuff.
Right.
And then at the same time, we've also got, reproductions of some of the classic artworks. We've got Van Gogh, Rembrandt, anything you could imagine. So
yeah, that's great. Some modern furnishings, some kind of throwback retro stuff.
Yep.
See the Coca-Cola lamp over there. So it's a whole vibe here, and so really neat space. So that's really just a very small part of your story, and so I definitely wanted to dig in. You've got a very unique history, and when we met a couple of years ago, I was so fascinated with all that you've done, and so I'd like to kind of take folks through that personal and professional journey that led you to doing projects like this in a smaller community like Delaware, Ohio.
Sure.
So kind of start at the beginning and talk us through what that looked like and kind of how that all got you to here.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I think I'd summarize it, I guess, sort of this way. If the audience is primarily, folks interested in, real estate development type stuff. So I grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, which is 10 or so miles east of Columbus. Did my undergraduate at Ohio State, finished undergrad in 2005. At the time, I wanted to move to a bigger city to try to make my way or what have you. So I moved to Washington, D.C. in 2005. Didn't know anyone in the city, didn't have any connections or anything. So I got a temp job at a law firm, sorting mail and stapling, collating papers.
Love it.
For $12 an hour. And
start at the bottom.
Yeah, that turned into a full-time job at the law firm. For a little bit, I thought I wanted to go to law school. So I applied, took the LSATs, got into a couple of decent schools, and then realized that I didn't actually want to do that. I was doing it because my parents were encouraging me to.
Right.
So I was I think I was must have been early 20s. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I was on a trip with my mom and my grandmother, and we were just kind of talking about things. And my grandmother said, "You seem to take a lot of pictures of buildings." So anyway, I had an old digital camera, and she asked me to call up the roll of photos, and we're looking, and we had been on this vacation for a week or so, and there was very few pictures of people. It was all buildings. She's like, "You should do something with that." So I applied for a job. I got an entry-level property management job at a big real estate firm in D.C. Called JVG, who's now publicly traded, massive company. Worked there for a little while, and I got fired because my boss thought I was trying to take her job, which I wasn't. But I think I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been self-starter. I've been the type of person that if I have an idea, if I think it's the better idea, I will propose it and pursue it. And the corporate hierarchy of the senior director said this, so everybody has to do this. Like, it never made sense to me. I'm always like a best idea wins type of person, no matter who it comes from.
Right. Yeah.
So I did that, and then I went and worked for another kind of boutique real estate development company in DC, and this was 2007, 06, 07, and depending on how old folks are that are listening, may or may not even remember or have lived through that as a working person, but that was a pretty tough time in the real estate world.
Yes, indeed.
So the company that I worked for, when I started, we had about 50 employees, and I was the youngest and the least experienced. And at the time, I didn't even realize what was happening, but every couple of weeks I'd show up and there'd be another empty office and then another empty office. And anyway, it was the Great Recession, the subprime mortgage thing that blew up the market. And so that company went from 50 people to a couple of months later, it was literally the owner and me, and that was it.
Wow.
And he kept me around because I was the cheapest.
You were the cheapest. Yeah, right.
So I ended up doing a whole bunch. I worked for about 18 months, and I did probably 10 years worth of stuff in a year and a half, just by necessity, like working out all the troubled properties and troubled loans and that type of stuff. So I was way over my head. I made 100 mistakes a day for 18 months, and kind of got the crap kicked out of me every day, but I loved every minute of it. I learned so much. And then I came out the back end of that, and a lot of the guys that I knew, almost everyone I knew in the real estate industry at that time, everyone lost their jobs. Yeah. Everyone had to either go back to business school, go back to law school, find a career in a different industry, because it just, the jobs didn't exist for a couple of years. Yeah. But I was fortunate to have had that opportunity to like really learn a lot of tough lessons on someone else's dime,
Yeah.
So I did that, and then after that, I started my own firm. I wouldn't even say my own firm, but I started flipping houses in DC essentially. So bought a house in a up and coming neighborhood, put every single nickel I had to my name into it, lived and breathed it, night and day for 6 months. Fully renovated it, sold it, made a little bit of money, and did it again, and kind of like looking back now, almost hard to believe like the risk tolerance, putting every single cent you have to your name into a project and just hoping that it works out.
I mean, this is the way that a lot of people in real estate, if they're working for themselves, like that's how they started, was doing something residential. They bought a rental, they bought a flip or whatever. But I mean, most of the people that I know that did it lived in the Midwest, so this is like a $100,000 risk, but in DC, I mean, these are not $100,000 houses that you're buying.
It was bigger, bigger dollars.
Although in those days they were cheap, way cheaper than what they are today.
Way cheaper, yes.
All the foreclosures and everything, perhaps that was good timing. But.
Yeah, our first couple of projects, like we would buy a condemned shell house that you would never set foot in a rough part of DC, and we would pay $300,000-$400,000 for it.
Right.
Put another 150 or so in, sell it for like $700,000 or $800,000 somewhere in there. And to me, that was huge money, because like I grew up middle class in Columbus. Those were obscene prices, but that's that's what the market is. So we did that for a little bit, and I kind of graduate up, like did a bunch of single family flips, and then we bought a duplex, and then a fourplex, and then an 8-unit, and you kind of work your way up. And if you're lucky, I was very fortunate to have good timing. I started at the bottom of the market,
right,
and there was kind of only one way to go. And for a while, me and a couple of other guys that were doing the same thing, same market, same time, we kind of like created a little informal, group to kind of help each other out with referrals and ideas and stuff. And for a few years there, we all thought that we were like the smartest guys on the planet, because we were just riding the wave up. That's all we were doing.
Better be lucky than good.
Yes.
I guess is the saying.
Yes. So I did that, and we did a whole bunch of interesting projects in DC. It was primarily self-financed at first. So it was for the DC market, like relatively small projects, had some successes. Friends and family or friends of friends asked if they could, invest, that type of thing. So slowly started to do bigger and bigger projects. And I believe it was 2013, kind of went on like a little bit of a road show, sort of, raised like real institutional capital from a New York hedge fund guy who basically wrote a blank check, like an 8-figure check. So he said, we wrote a bunch of case studies on our projects. These are our returns, that type of thing. And he said, go make a real business out of it. Yeah. So started a company in 2013, hired a bunch of young folks, got in office, did all that. So 2013 to 2016 or 17, we were kind of like off to the races. We did, 10, 12, 15 projects a year, just kind of like running 100 miles an hour, having fun, making some money.
Yeah. What kind of projects were those?
A lot of those were, we did a lot of condo conversions.
Okay.
So the neighborhoods that we worked with in DC, there were a lot of historic neighborhoods, like kind of right around the, Capitol and the monuments. So a lot of historic buildings that like you buy a building, convert it into like 4, 8, 15 condos, sell them out, that type of thing. A lot of adaptive reuse stuff, like we bought old office buildings, converted them to apartments. Bought warehouse buildings, converted them to apartments. Church, a school, that type of stuff.
So it was pretty much, you were turning everything into residential.
Primarily. Not exclusively, but primarily. There was like in that time period, and it's changed since COVID, but in that time period, there was a massive influx of people that wanted to live in DC. So it was wild. Like you almost didn't have to do like a demand side study. It was just obvious that the demand was there.
Yeah. Going back to the, when you went on this roadshow, you found this hedge fund that wanted to invest. I mean, what do you think that it was that kind of sold them on you and the opportunity? I'm sure that those types of places get all kinds of pitches. Did they ever say, or did you get a sense of what it was that they saw in you and in your projects that were attractive?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. One, it was personal connections for sure. There were some relationships involved that, other people sort of like vouched for my character, I guess. And honestly, I think if it weren't for that, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Because I was just like a kid from Ohio that had an idea. But I think it's character. It was pretty thorough underwriting, like, obviously all the financial analysis and stuff like that, but even during that time frame, I could tell that there was a lot of like, sort of like tests or something, like putting us in situations where they wanted to see how we'd respond. I think like just testing character. I think.
Yeah, interesting. So you went through that run through 2017 or so, and then continued right in DC.
Yeah. So
another project.
Well, 2016. We had. 2016 was a combination of things, but on the business side, Donald Trump was running for president, and he was all about like drain the swamp. That was his big thing, drain the swamp. And at the time, I took that to heart. I thought he was actually going to do it, and if he did, it would have decimated the DC real estate market. So, and they're kind of experiencing a little bit of that now there. But the first time he said he was going to do it. So we kind of got scared. We wanted to like deleverage a little bit. So we sold about half of our portfolio, kind of just in case, just in case he actually did that, So we pulled some chips off the table. Of course, it didn't happen. And 2016 to 2020 was like just another 4 years of more up.
Huge run up, yeah.
And then COVID was a little blip, and then another 4 years of up. And but anyways, we did that, and then I took some time off. I got divorced in 2016, and we kind of, that, along with like paring down the portfolio, I had been working like 100 hours a week for a decade, and I just took some time off. So I did the thing where like I sold the house, sold a lot of stuff, put some stuff in storage, and then like literally just traveled the world for a couple of years. So I like I lived on a vineyard in California for a year, learned how to make wine.
Wow.
Lived in Seattle for a little bit. And then I kind of got on a circuit of doing like volunteer opportunities, like disaster recovery stuff around the world.
Very cool.
So I lived in Puerto Rico for 6 months after the hurricane.
Yes.
We thought we were going to be rebuilding people's homes, but the level of devastation was so much that we were just for 6 months clearing out debris.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that, and I traveled all over Europe, Asia, South America for a couple of years.
Incredible.
I had some really fun experiences. I'm very glad I had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lifetime of experiences in 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, and in some ways I learned more from the travel than, anything else. Like,
right.
I'm a big believer in traveling. Is like, it opens up your mind to so many different cultures and like ways of looking at things. And
yes.
Definitely find that, of course you do like the big capital cities because you want to see, Rome and London and Athens and all that stuff. But I had the most fun visiting like small little towns and villages and like second and third world countries that most people have not heard of. That They're just meeting like regular people, and they speak different language and stuff, but you really understand like people are the same.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Wow. Very, very fascinating. And I'm sure, I mean, not, the interpersonal lessons, and then, talk about architecture and design and just inspiration galore from going to those places and seeing. We just recently did a Europe trip as well, and I mean, just the placemaking and the way that these different communities, especially in Europe, just the restaurants and the patio spaces and the public squares and the way that they're using public spaces for gathering and just creating community is really, really fascinating and inspiring. And I think there's just so much to be learned from that.
One of the things I love about going over to Europe, especially in some parts of Asia as well, but they're so much older than our, society is here.
Right,
We're only, a couple hundred years old, but a lot of the work that I do, and I think you're the same way, it's buying historic buildings. And here in the States, a historic building means it's like 100 years old.
Right.
And that's like impressive. But you go to, some of these other parts of the world and they've got buildings that were built like 1,000 years ago.
Right.
2,000
exactly.
years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Puts things into perspective.
The new buildings are 500 years old.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So, okay. Wow. That was a significant part of your story for sure.
Yep.
But then you kind of came back from that and then what?
Yeah, came back from that, kind of threw myself into work again in DC in 2019. And after having that kind of whirlwind experience, DC just seemed kind of dull a little bit. Like it was kind of riding that high of so many fun life experiences, and then you got to kind of go back into like DC corporate real estate, and it just kind of like wore me down. I wasn't thrilled about it. I kind of like, faked it or whatever for a year, and then COVID hit and just totally decimated DC. Obviously, the whole world shut down for a while.
Right.
The bigger major cities on the East Coast and West Coast kind of bared the brunt of it. Like the lockdown policies were pretty bad. So anyway, I left. I moved back to Columbus. End of 2020, early 21. Like I said, I grew up here. My parents are both still here. I have two brothers in town. They're here, and I just wanted kind of a new start, sort of. So moved back here, I guess 4.5 years ago, and kind of decided on a professional front, like I wanted to start another similar company to the one I had in DC. But I wanted to do it sort of like organically and kind of more my way. Because when I was in DC, the parts of the projects that I loved the most were like going on site, like doing the demo. I'm not a good construction guy at all. My brothers will be the first to attest to that. But I like that part of it. I like being on site, talking with contractors, vendors, like figuring out what are you going to do with the space. And as we grew in DC, I got further and further removed from that because we hired a development manager, project manager. So it's I ended up getting sort of shoved to the side and doing nothing but approving contracts and paperwork and stuff. So I wanted to get back to what I consider the fun parts of the projects here. So I started another company here, Jablonka Real Estate Partners, early 21, with the focus of buying historically significant but underutilized commercial properties in and around Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
So we've in the last couple of years, we've bought a couple of buildings: German Village, Brewery District, Short North. Our projects here in Delaware, and we're always looking, but kind of that mentality of taking buildings that used to be beautiful and kind of making them that way again.
Yeah. That's what Main Street Reimagined is all about. That's where we started, and obviously that's the level on which you and I connected, and have a really shared passion for that, and have met some other people along the way. I know both of us have that share that passion. It's kind of a niche but growing thing to find people that are looking to reimagine what places can be, because a lot of these old buildings, they can't be what they once were. The uses are different. People, culture, community is different than what it was when they were built 100 150 years ago, and even from 20 or 50 years ago. But to reimagine those new uses. So talk a little bit about the project here. So you've got you acquired like 3 buildings that are all adjacent here in downtown Delaware, and it was the old health department, from what I understand. And so they had vacated, and so there was a bank still that remains, but otherwise the buildings were all empty and in need of reimagination, right?
Yeah. So late 22, we were coming off of a 1031. We had a building in the Brewery District that we didn't intend to sell, but got approached with an offer that was kind of like too good to say no to.
And we have to be open for those.
Yeah, of course. We'd owned it for less than 2 years, so we were looking at pretty big capital gains tax. So we did a 1031 and kind of cast in a lot of nets, and we found these buildings and put them in contract January of 23. The Delaware County Health Department occupied all 3 buildings. So we bought 41 North Sandusky, which is a building we're in now, and then 1, 3, and 5 West Winter Street as well. And like you said, they occupied the whole thing. They had grown out of the space, so they're building a much larger facility down the street to move into. So essentially we were buying a vacant office building. And at that time, like in the just post-COVID years, the office market was like not a very favored product among lenders.
Yeah, exactly. I bought some of that at that time too. And they were like, nobody's going to use offices anymore. It's it's 2021. People are never going back to the office.
Yeah. So very difficult to finance.
Yeah.
We ended up having to do like a lot more equity than we typically do. The financing part was tricky, but we finally got it done. So we closed March of 23. The health department had some delays on their new facility, so they ended up staying for a couple of months.
Okay.
But that gave us a couple more months to like figure out design and execution and stuff, So anyway, we spent the last 2 years breaking up the property so it was sort of single tenant in a way when we bought it. We've reprogrammed it into 6 tenant spaces now. So we started with the smallest building at 5 West Winter. It was previously like a women and infant walk-in clinic, and we reprogrammed that space into retail storefront. So there's a pottery studio there, and then we moved next door to 3 West Winter, which was like a 7,000 square foot building that we put Cocinamos, which is a Venezuelan bakery, and they're now a full service restaurant as well. But we did that build out. And then we moved over here to the largest building on the corner, and the upper 4 floors are, we did like a full gut renovation. We did keep it as office use. It's a Regis HQ furnished co-working space. So that one, we had to think on that one for a long time. We got a lot of pushback from our lender and every other lender in town. They were not thrilled with the prospect of like sinking another 7 figures into an office renovation with no tenants lined up, no revenue. So it was a big risk, and we had to that took a while to get that part done. But
how did you overcome that with the bank? I mean, to have conversation. If you're saying, hey, need additional funding for this, and they're like, we don't feel comfortable with that. I mean, what did it take to get over the hurdle?
I think what it took, we created like a 50-page business plan, loan request, and shared it with 7 or 8 lenders, and they all said no way, and a couple of them second time said no, and a couple of them third time said no, and the one of them, Buckeye State Bank, is one of our best lending partners. We've done several loans with them, and they ultimately did come through. The terms of the loan were not super advantageous to us, but when you're trying to finance like an undesirable product, generally speaking,
right?
But I think it was just a lot of determination and just gathering additional data points. Like we worked with Regis's corporate team. So Regis is a publicly traded company. They have 4,000 locations. They're in 120 countries. Mm-hmm. So that helped, the bank's credit committee get comfortable with it. We were able to pull a lot of data points from other centers that they have in the market. This is their, revenue per square foot. This is their lease up pace. This is what they're stabilized at. To help get the bank comfortable with there's a reasonable expectation here that like there's 6 or 7 other identical product types within a 30-mile radius. They're all doing this. It's reasonable to assume we should be able to do a similar thing,
Yeah. I think there's a lot of gold in what you're talking about there. First of all, you had to get comfortable with what you felt was going to be successful.
Yep.
And then really believe in it and be passionate about it to take it to these different lenders.
Yep.
And I meet so many people that have a business idea or they want to get into real estate or whatever, and they tell me that they're so discouraged. And I'm like, well, how many banks have you talked to? And they're like, well, 1. I said, well, how many times have you talked to me? Once. And it's like, well, okay, let me set the expectation for you that just like any other business deal, like you're going to get told no.
Yep.
And so different banks have different appetites for different things at different times.
Yep.
And you have to be your own advocate. You've got to put on a little bit of a sales hat here to really sell them on why you believe this idea is going to be successful.
Yep.
And it can't be all smoke and mirrors. There has to be substance to it, but you also have to be really passionate about it. And it sounds like that was your approach, and it took some doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I joke, like sometimes you meet new people these days and they ask, what do you do? And sometimes I say, I get told no. Like, that's what I do for a living. I get told no. It feels like there's a lot of days when everything you're proposing, whether it's like asking for a zoning variance from the city, no. Asking a historic preservation committee to do something, no.
Yeah.
Asking a lender for money, no. Asking a tenant or something, no.
Right.
You just got to find ways.
Asking public utilities, now you're still on hold.
Right.
But you'll eventually get told no, probably there too.
Yeah, you just have to learn you got to massively reset your expectations.
Yeah.
And if you get told no once, that doesn't mean anything. Like most stuff I've tried to do, I get told no dozens of times before. Like you got to adapt and find a way around it.
Yes. Yeah, that's so critical. So obviously you got over that hump. And then the Leisure Club Lounge was kind of the last piece of the puzzle here.
Yep. Yeah, this space is the last part of the project for us. When we bought the buildings 2 years ago, I mentioned to you that the basement here wasn't even included, like not even in the plans, not included in the square footage that was advertised. It was just kind of like a dingy little like cafeteria break room for the health department. And I just had a feeling like I knew that at some point it could be something really cool. Mm-hmm. So we spent the first, 18 months or so focusing on upstairs, getting the street fronts activated, putting retail tenants in there, getting the office space done and ready for tenants to move into. And the whole time, just kind of like, we'd always come down to the basement and know like, there's going to be something really cool down here one day. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be a fun spot. So, like I said, my brothers own a construction company, and kind of like over the last 2.5 years, in between jobs type thing for them. Like we'd come up, focus for a couple of weeks, like we demoed it, then we white boxed it, then we like did a little bit more build out, and we had the space available for lease the whole time, but couldn't find anyone with the vision to like make the leap.
Yeah.
So we ended up taking the build out further and further, much further than you typically would. As you know, speccing out a retail bar space is like kind of expensive, and you run the risk of like if you go too far, you customize it a little bit too much, and you turn people away, and you might sign a lease, and then they want to rip everything out and do something else.
Right.
So, but we did that. So we built the custom bar, we built the booths, put ceiling tiles in, did the lighting design, built a little mini kitchen in the back, and met up with the leisure club folks, got introduced to them at like the perfect time. And they were able to take kind of what we had started and like really take it up to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, again, oftentimes what it takes, speaking of vision and passion and everything. Again, sometimes when people don't get the vision, we've talked with some other developers, on this podcast before, and, they've talked about we can use photos and models and some of that to articulate the vision, but sometimes people still don't get it. Sometimes you have to, just out of necessity, build something to a point where it's going to be really consumable for someone to come in and say, okay, we can take this the last 20% or 30% the rest of the way to make it something really special.
Yeah, and like I understand construction and design from like a real estate perspective. I don't have a design bone in my body as far as this stuff. So like I said, it was very fortunate timing that we connected with Matt and Jason and Felicia at the perfect time, because they sort of took the baseline that we had and just like really, so we've only been open for a week or so, but so Downtown Delaware does a thing called First Fridays. So we intentionally teed our opening up to in conjunction with the June 1st Friday.
Yeah, smart.
So this past Friday we had probably 250 people or so walk through the space. Awesome. And overwhelming positive feedback. It's very nice to like put your heart and soul into something for a very long time, and to have it be well received. It's very nice. But,
yeah, and again, as sometimes is out of necessity or out of desire, you put a lot of heart and passion into something. You're kind of staying on as part of the owner of the business as well, although you're not kind of a front lines operational player in the game. But yeah, I mean, we've done that. Other small developers we talk to, a lot of them, end up being involved in the businesses just because you're into it and want to see it be successful and try to align interests with your operating partners to bring something special to the community. And I think you guys have. So I know that we could, sit and talk about this for hours. Where we're on, Jared's got to get off and keep moving projects forward and everything here. So we'll land the plane. But it's great hearing your story and just the road that kind of brought you back to Ohio, which is super cool. And then we connected because of mutual friends here in Ohio as well. And but you still got your ventures in Washington D.C. You still got some stuff going there and a team.
Still do, well. Yeah. We've got we own 25 assets in Washington D.C. I've got a team there that kind of handles all the leasing, management, day-to-day stuff. I typically go back once a month just to check up on our properties. I do that. We didn't cover it, but I'm a licensed commercial real estate appraiser as well.
Oh, okay.
So I do appraisals in not in Ohio actually, but D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. I've been doing that for 15 years as well. So I'll usually fly back once a month, pick up an appraisal or two, check up on our portfolio. And I used to do it in like 72-hour trips and then 48-hour trips. And now that my wife and I had a baby in September, and I hate being away from him even for a night. So I'll fly out 6 a.m. flight, back midnight same day. Don't even stay.
Yeah. But the classic entrepreneur, just winding a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just keeping different experiences as part of it. So that's cool. And now that this is wrapping up, I know we talked, you're looking for the next project here. So
yeah, excited to find the next extremely challenging, really messed up project that I could throw myself into.
Yeah, it's a sickness. We just have to go from one to the next, don't we? We just got to keep setting ourselves up. You get a place where you can coast, and you start back at the bottom of the mountain and start climbing again.
I get bored so easily. Like I told my wife I'd take a week to recover. she's got a pretty extensive honey-do list.
I can understand. Yeah.
That I ticked off a couple this weekend, actually.
Well done. Yeah.
But, yeah. Excited for the next challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks again for taking the time with us here. Just real briefly, if you don't mind, share how folks can follow along with the Leisure Club, and then you personally, your upcoming projects.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Leisure Club. We're leisureclub.co. We're on social media, Instagram and Facebook. That's not really my foray. That my partners are social media whizzes. I think I have like 20 followers. I'm not the best social media guy, but we have a good presence. Yeah, come check us out. Like I said, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 to 11. It's usually a pretty good scene. If the first weekend was any indication, pretty fun. Very fun scene.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you again, Jared. Thank you to those that have tuned in to watch and listen here. Hopefully you took away some lessons and some learning points here to inspire you and educate you forward for your next project, hopefully reimagining something and bringing something better to the world. So hope that you'll join us again for our next episode. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to the Main Street Reimagined podcast. To learn more about Main Street Reimagined, Henry Development Group, or our work in downtown Marion, Ohio, please visit mainstreetreimagined.com. If you want to connect, or if you know someone who we need to interview, shoot us an email at info@mainstreetreimagined.com. Until next time, keep dreaming and don't be afraid to take the leap.